7 league titles, 5 Champions Leagues, 5 Ballon d'Ors. If I said this CV to anyone, there's no chance you'd think this player would make any team worse that he joined. But here we are talking about Cristiano Ronaldo. And we're seeing his latest stage of his career now. It seems to be dwindling, which is a bit of a shame seeing him in Saudi. But I'm here to make the argument, did Ronaldo potentially make some teams worse that he joined later down the line in his career? I'm not talking about the Man United under Ferguson and the early days at Madrid. To be honest, even the latter stage, it was just really mainly the Juventus and the Manchester United teams that he joined later down the line. Did he potentially, his individual success come at the cost of the team? So let's get into it. If you want to start with Ronaldo's obvious success stories, he started in Manchester United with Ferguson winning 3 straight league titles, Champions League, FA Cup, and winning the Ballon d'Or there. And it showed that he was, second best player in the world at that point, maybe the first. But I think with that, the team was slightly built around him because he had players like Carlos Tevez, Wayne Rooney, Ji-sung Park, all to cover up for his lack of pressing and allows him just to have free reign, basically. And I think this was the most skillful Ronaldo we saw in his career. He was down that left touch line, he was doing step overs, he kind of brought the knuckleball free kick into fashion, and it just looked like a world beater. But I think that is also because Ferguson built that team slightly around Ronaldo, where someone like Wayne Rooney, who in any other team could be the star of the show and could have won a Ballon d'Or, he took a backseat role to Ronaldo, and it allowed him to flourish more when, he didn't have to work as hard. And then it takes you over to Real Madrid, where it was the Galacticos 2.0, wasn't it? It had Kaká, it had Benzema, it had later down the line with Gareth Bale. And I think this was a case that domestically they didn't actually dominate too much. You could argue, they were in the period when Messi was dominating, in the Neymar Suarez Messi era, plus Simeone was creating a dominant defence with that Atletico Madrid team. So obviously there's context to this, and I remember watching him during this time. Real Madrid looked like a good squad, and it never looked like Ronaldo, it cost them, him playing well. And I think it allowed other players to flourish. I remember when Di Maria was excellent. I think Karim Benzema did have a good career. But you could argue, why is it taking Benzema to his mid-30s to win the Ballon d'Or? He had his best season, 2 years ago, 1 season ago? And it really shows that he really had to take a backseat to Ronaldo. And you could argue it really, because on one hand, Ronaldo was instrumental in getting them 4 Champions Leagues and just dominating Europe in the 2010s. And that can't be argued, but on another thing, if Benzema and Gareth Bale maybe had more free reign, or Di Maria maybe, because you think about it, Di Maria shouldn't have left Real Madrid. He was left to go to Man United, but the season before that, I think he arguably could have won the Ballon d'Or. I think it was after Ronaldo that year. He was fantastic, but he obviously had to go because they had to make room for the players that they had there. And you could argue maybe it came to the expense of Real Madrid. I personally don't think so. But 2 titles in, 10 years for Ronaldo at Real Madrid? It wasn't too great compared to Messi's haul in that period. So you could make the argument that Ronaldo maybe held him back in the league, or they focused too much on him. Gareth Bale or Benzema, Di Maria, whoever needed to take a back seat to him. I personally wouldn't agree with that. I think he was the main reason they did dominate in Europe for that period. And 2 league titles is still a good haul. I think one, is disgraceful how Real Madrid treat the players on the way out. Look at Iker Casillas going to Porto and Ronaldo going to Juventus. He's the best player of all time at that club. However, they just tossed him aside. It didn't seem like he got a good farewell tour. But regardless of that, I think Juventus and Manchester United Part 2 are the indictments of Ronaldo and shows how he could potentially damage a club that he goes to, because he went to Juventus in 2018 for 100 plus million euros, and Juventus had been very dominant in Europe at that time. They had won, I think it's 7 straight league titles, and they'd constantly been to Champions League finals, semi-finals. They just lost out on Real Madrid with that Ronaldo penalty when Buffon got sent off. And when Ronaldo joined, players have said like the DNA changed. Buffon did say when he did join it, the Juventus DNA that had been so instrumental with Bonucci and Chiellini and Barzagli and Pirlo, Matuidi and Vidal and all these players, it did change when he came to the club, which it's obviously going to do. The focus is more on him. And someone like Leonardo Bonucci did say his presence had a big influence on us. Just training with him had something extra, but subconsciously players started to think his presence alone was enough to win games, which isn't necessarily Ronaldo's fault. If people are over-relying on him, then that is a team thing that just comes when a star player like him joins a club, which is unfortunate. And you really need a good manager to work around that. So that's not necessarily Ronaldo's fault. And this is the aim of the video. It's not to say it is all Ronaldo's fault that he damages a club. I think it's other players. I think it's the way he gets treated and just how people idolise him because he's such a star in the sport that it could hurt a club. And if you look, he did win 2 league titles with Juventus. He didn't get further than the quarterfinals with Juventus in the Champions League. I mean, they lost to Ajax in the one they probably should have beaten them, but you could argue Ajax was just on a run that year. But they were in it's a tough one because they were in a bit of a turnover period, a bit of a rebuild because they had to bring in players like Paulo Dybala. They brought in players like Chiesa. They had Kulusevski for a while, and they lost a lot of the Pirlos had gone. Chiellini's was getting older. The Buffon's gone to PSG. The Bonucci's was getting older, and it was just a rebuilding process that I think Ronaldo helps them through. However, if you look at it, I think the team sometimes they don't benefit by Ronaldo scoring so many goals because at Manchester United when he joined in the part 2, in 2020-2021, United actually scored 73 goals, but then in 2021-22, they only scored 57. However, Ronaldo was their main top scorer. So despite his individual success, he comes at the disadvantage of the Mason Greenwoods, the Bruno Fernandes, who the season before scored 18 goals. So it's a tough one. Do you argue that more focus needs to go on him, or his is less work rate and more just pure goal scoring ability comes at the the negative of the team? Because in that season when he joined, his pressures per 90 was 6.7, which was in the bottom 1 percentile of strikers in the league, which shows he's not chasing down these runners, but he doesn't have the Ji-sung Parks back in the day to help him out, the Michael Carricks back in the day, the Owen Hargreaves, the Tevez's, the Rooney's, the Modric's, the Casemiro's, the Toni Kroos. He doesn't have all these players that, used to compensate for just his pure goal scoring ability. And you could argue, well, when he went to Manchester United, the team wasn't built in a way to help him. He had players like Paul Pogba and Bruno Fernandes who were very attacking players and weren't going to do the quote-unquote dirty work around him. Maybe if Ronaldo joined this current Man United team with Amrabat and Casemiro and all these players, even someone like Scott McTominay, just to do the dirty work around him, it could have really benefited him. And I personally think the last point, which was just massive at Manchester United and it caused the whole thing to unravel and him to head over to Saudi Arabia, was his attitude. Because we all know Ronaldo is one of, if not the hardest workers in modern football history. That's how he's got so successful, really. People argue he doesn't have that natural ability that Messi does. I don't believe that. I think he's still naturally talented. I think he was just the Michael Jordan of football, wasn't he? He was one of the most talented, but also the hardest worker. But in the Manchester United team, for example, when Ten Hag tried to bring him on against Tottenham at Old Trafford, he walked down the touchline, and despite calling out young players, calling out the facilities, and trying to make Manchester United to the Ferguson standard, I think the way he handled himself, sulking a lot for someone in the mid-30s, is one, embarrassing, and two, just doesn't set a good example of, for the young players, because I think we all know Man United is rotten. There's a lot of problems going on there, but it doesn't help when you have a aging superstar whose abilities aren't what they used to be, but he still thinks they were, to essentially act like a spoiled child. If he was 2015 Ronaldo, he could walk off and he could do absolutely anything he wanted because his return was 50, 60 goals in a season. However, when he's 35, 36 years old, yes, he might be scoring 18, 19, but that's not enough to warrant his reactions to Ten Hag subbing him or bringing him on with 3 minutes left or so. I think this, along with all the controversy and all the stories he brings to the club, just it does damage the club. And I personally think Man United put themselves back 2 or 3 years by signing him, because I know he was going to go to Man City, and I completely understand why why Man United needed to sign him. However, just the way he stored, I mean, obviously now it's not great to say, but at the time before the allegations and the court cases and just his personality came out, Mason Greenwood was excellent. It did stunt his growth. Rashford was excellent. It stunted his growth. Cavani was finding his place in that Man United team. He obviously took a back seat. Bruno Fernandes was their best player, and then he had his national team captain come in, and it feels like you're going to be the little brother to him, which I think it's stupid why they signed him, but I just really wanted to argue this case. I don't think either way, really. I think he did harm Man United, potentially Juventus, but not to the same extent, because I think there was more issues going on there with the exodus of all their old players who create this success for them. So I don't really blame that much. Manchester United 100%, and I will not take any, he called them out for what they were doing wrong. Everyone knows what Man United are doing wrong, but you're one of the most experienced players, you're a legend at the club. You should act like it and be that experienced player and don't go sulking. I think Real Madrid and Manchester United in the first time, I don't think he caused any damage to those clubs. I think he propelled those clubs into massive success, and I don't think United would have won the 3 titles in a row without him, and I don't think Real Madrid would have come anywhere near winning those Champions Leagues without him, because he was just that star player who, in big moments, we all remember the Juventus goal, we all remember the penalty against Juventus, we all remember all these big moments where Ronaldo just came to the table and he proved why he should have won those Ballon d'Ors. But let me know what you think. Let me know if Ronaldo did damage these clubs. I think people always make the comparison between him and Messi and say Messi's much more of a team player. I think there's negatives on Messi as well, because if you look at PSG didn't perform great, but again, that's another story. Do they have more issues under the surface? Yes, they do. But yeah, let me know what you think. I think Man United is undeniable, but all the rest are really up for the debate. If you could like the video, that'd be great. And if you could leave a comment, fantastic. And if you're new here, if you could subscribe, that'd be great. I'll have more of this content coming out, not just quick opinion pieces. And yeah, thanks for watching.